Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of SDRescue, brought to you, as always, by SD Revolution. I am your co-host, Grayson Fulbright, and with me is my co-founder, AJ Alonso. How you doing, AJ?
I'm good, Grayson. I'm excited to be here today. I feel like I hop on more often than I ever thought I would, and I really like it. I love doing this show, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I converted you into a host over time, slowly. Awesome. So today we're going to be looking at an email that I received. So for the past few episodes, we have been kind of breaking down some of the messaging that we ourselves have been, writing and testing. As you know, everyone on the team here gets into copywriting for salespeople. But today we're going to be looking at an email that I actually got in my spam folder. It caught my eye, and after digesting all of the messaging, I thought this would be a really good example to break down. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's dive into this.
Dive on in.
Fair enough.
What is it usually at 150%?
You see it, AJ?
I can see it. There we go. I think it just took a hot second for my my internet to recognize that you were sharing something.
That makes sense. Yeah, there might be a little delay here, so we'll see how well my Wi-Fi holds out through this show. Cool. All right. So I'll go ahead and read it, and then we'll give AJ's initial thoughts first. So the subject line is "This week or next." Hi, Grayson. I hope you've had a productive week and are looking forward to the weekend. Within your role, I'm sure that increasing business revenues and getting the most out of your marketing spend is a priority for you. And so I'd love to show you how our brand can help you with that. One of customers recently said, in quotes, this company generated $180,000 in gross revenue, increased their leads by 20%, and their overall sales activity by 10% with this brand. Are you currently missing out on the 98% of website visitors that do not make contact? Can you imagine the impact on your results if you knew which organizations are visiting your site and when, as well as contact information and insight into their behavior? Mind-blowing. We want you to see the same success. Wouldn't it be a good time for you to see how it works via an online demonstration? We can get your test run set up the same day so you can start to see who is visiting your website. Let me know a time that works best for you. Right, let's get the color coding.
Give me that color.
Mini colors.
They went through the whole
mini colors.
the whole box, the whole Crayola box for this one. I would say right off the bat, this is an example of an email that is, and I'm going to use this word intentionally, verbose. More often than not, and this is like something that I preach regularly, you want to write like you speak to a certain extent, in the way that the concepts that you're attempting to distill and relay over to your prospect, the simpler the better if you can accomplish that. And I think this person did a lot of working, kind of beating around the bush, getting introducing their product and who they are and all of this stuff to you before getting to really what I consider like the meat of the message, which is somewhere in the middle of, are you currently missing out on 98% of website visitors that don't make contact? I feel like that right there, that sentence is what you should be leading this message with, because you're attempting to illuminate a potential pain point that maybe I don't know about, or something that I haven't necessarily considered, that this email is getting me to start the gears turning and thinking about, oh, am I actively capturing all these people visiting my website? Instead, they kind of front load it with all of this information about who they are, what their brand is, who they've helped, before even getting to that point. So I would say right off the bat, a little bit verbose and a little bit too long, kind of burying the lead. Initial thoughts on the email.
I completely agree with your first point about it being verbose, and I think we see emails in this situation a lot where either because they're uncomfortable or they don't really know the best way to kind of convince somebody to have a conversation. They kind of have that marketing page look where they've got everything out on one email, like every piece of information that they think that they can provide, they just kind of spaghetti it onto the wall and hope that it sticks. And I think that really bleeds into, with this email, it bleeds into the organization. I think if you read this and maybe cut it down some, maybe reorganize a few of these sentences, it would read a little better and might even come off a little bit more convincing. But I feel, at least when I read it the first time, it seemed to be very choppy. It says, I hope you had a great weekend. You're making an assumption about my role, and then you want to talk about how you can help me with some things, and you go straight to a testimonial quote about your customer when I don't even know what your product is. Then you're asking me questions in a weird, vague way to like share what your product does. And I think it's almost like they didn't know how to present the value proposition behind, hey, we have a software that does XYZ to help brands do XYZ. It never specifically calls out what they're about, how they can help me. And instead, it's kind of through many different sentences trying to angle in the best way to just describe the product's value prop. So I think this is something that we see a lot, where you need to be able to not only keep your information compact, but you need to have it flow well together. It's nice to share a customer testimonial. It builds rapport and authority. It shows that, oh, you've brought positive outcomes to an actual company. This isn't your first time selling. It also can show some highlighted like future states that they can hold on to when they decide to respond. But there's a time and a place for a testimonial. On the same end, questions can really drive curiosity. Questions can be a really great way to get people to reflect on their situation and maybe even reveal pains that they're feeling that they might not have even been aware of. But too many questions and questions used as a way to describe the product can be confusing, and it can actually almost hide the true picture you're trying to paint, which is, we are a software that shows you what visitors are visiting your website and gives you the info to follow up. I kind of lost that as I read through it. The only other comment that I wanted to make is the intro is my least favorite part of the whole email. I feel like almost everything else, we've seen this before in other emails, but you can get away with it. But with the intro, it starts with assumptions about my role, with certainty. It uses the words, I'm sure, and then has such vague benefits about what they think I'm prioritizing. It's just immediately losing credibility, because of course everyone is wanting to increase business revenues, but that's it's not as easy as just saying, oh yes, please press a button and increase my business revenues, and then getting the most out of your marketing spend. Of course, anybody that has a budget is going to want to maximize the productivity and usefulness of the budget that they've been allocated, whether it's marketing, whether it's any department. And so I feel like when you're using intros and you're vague like this, and also you're relying on assumptions, to me, it shows that you don't really know enough about me as a buyer or about the product space to enter and start a conversation. You have to lean on these assumptions in order to open the email, because you don't understand, how you could catch my attention in an organic way by mentioning the core of what the product does.
Yeah, I think that's what you just said right there is huge. And to me, it's funny because this is obviously a sales email. Like they're trying to get you to buy something, but I think people have been almost trained at this point to, when they see a salesy email, it puts up some type of blinder or like alert detector that they're about to get sold to. And this email is a very salesy email, from the introduction, from the way that they put in that customer testimonial in there, and how they frame the CTA. It all screams, I'm trying to sell you something. And you brought up something early on that I think a lot of people kind of overlook is that if you are a salesperson, yes, obviously your goal is to try and to get someone to buy your stuff, but primarily what you want to be doing is helping them. You want to help them solve an issue. You want to help them overcome any kinds of pains or challenges that they're facing to let them hit goal. And if your solution can do that, great. Makes sense for you to have a conversation. I'm not being helped in any way by reading this email. I'm just seeing somebody try to sell me something that can, you know, to their words, help me capture the 98% of website visitors I'm not doing or not capturing. And that's great. But like I've been, flag, have been pulled up throughout reading this email to the point where even if I get to the end, I'm so unenthused about getting back to this person that unless I was absolutely in the market for their solution and it was something that I had been talking about that day, like I'm not going to get back to you. And to your point, it's about the way they organize it, the way that it's framed, how I read it. All of that goes into my experience as the recipient of this email. And um, ironically, if it's too salesy, you're not going to capture people's attention, or to your point that you kind of ended with there, have any organic reason for you to be reaching out other than I'm trying to sell you something.
I agree. Like, to your point about it being salesy, I think one thing I noticed about this email that, and I've seen this with other emails too, I feel like this is a problem that can come out of desperation for salespeople, either needing to hit their numbers on a daily basis, or they're just trying to search for leads, where they make a problem exist, but they're not honing in on a problem that their persona might actually have. That they're creating the problem and assuming that the problem is there, and that the thoughts of the prospect, and that you have this problem and that I'm here to fix it. And it's almost like an incorrect take on consultative selling, where it's like you're trying to, in a single email, not only call someone out for having a problem and then sharing that you are the person with the solution to them, but then you're trying to describe it in a way to where it's almost like it's almost like you're trying to like blame them for it. It's like, hey, within your role, I'm sure you know that increasing business revenues and getting the most out of your marketing budget is really important. So I'm going to help you with that. Guess what? You're missing out on website visitors.
How are you
They
not
just like
doing
go
this
out and say
already?
it. Yes. And then in the way that they describe the solution is almost like assuming that the reader has not thought of it before. So it's one thing to say, hey, I think that you're missing out on this many website visitors that don't make contact. But then it's another thing to follow up and say, like, you, marketing director, whose full-time career is marketing, can you imagine the impact on your results if you just knew who those visitors might be? It's very dangerous to make such a bold assumption that also can rub into the credibility or the reputation of your prospect. There are different ways that you can frame this to kind of get the point across, but the most dangerous way is doing it like that, where you call out a problem and assume that it exists for them without really asking, and then creating a solution assuming that they have never heard of it before, or that they just, if only they had talked to you, and then everything would be fine with their world. I think what it ends up looking like, and we've talked about this before, is the salesperson's talking to themselves. They have their template, they have their messaging that is either approved or they've just been using it over and over. And the whole point is they just want to get the perfect once in a blue moon opportunity that's going to read this and actually be like, oh, whoa, you're right, I'm missing out. And then actually be unaware of the potential of seeing who's visiting their website. And that's such a small number of prospects compared to the total pool that they should be targeting.
For sure. Yeah, you were saying that, and I was like imagining me reading this email and getting to that mind-blowing portion there. And it's like, I get it. If you're writing an email, you do want to inject some personality. You want to have fun with it. But like, to your point, if it's in that, it's almost like ego deflating instead of ego stroking, where it's like mind blowing, and you're like, yeah, I know. You got to be careful with the words that you pick and where you put them. That's for sure.
Yeah, because it can definitely come off as counterintuitive. Kind of reminds me of like for like lead solutions. There's so many people that can provide leads for salespeople nowadays, and it'd be like describing the ability to have a list of people that you could call. Mind blowing, you know. It kind of shows almost, or reveals a little bit of your unpreparedness, or your lack of knowledge in the space when you make such a claim about what the prospect should think about your sentence. Because again, we're just getting in the weeds here, but it's one thing to claim they're missing out on something or not knowing something. It's another thing to claim a solution that you're assuming they've never heard of or thought of. And then it's past the line, it draws the line when you're making assumptions about how a prospect would feel about your sentences. If you're emailing somebody to start a sales conversation and you're expecting the word mind-blowing to be one of the ways that they would describe their reading experience, I'd say maybe you've gone a little bit too far.
Temper some of those expectations.
Should we move on to the rewrite?
Yeah, I'm excited to get into this rewrite because a lot of what we've been talking about so far, I'm already thinking ahead of how you've framed that and rewritten this email.
I tried. You know, I'm not the best at selling website analytics software, but I'm going to do my best. So I did the rewrites today, and I did 2 different versions because I am operating geek and I wanted to try different ways to end the email and kind of use the offer that the original gave us. So AJ, do you want to read the first one and I can read the second?
Sure. Rewrite number 1, Grayson rewrite number 1. Starts off, hi Grayson. Is SD Revolution tracking qualified website visitors that aren't captured as leads? As much as 98% of a site's traffic won't make contact after visiting. Unless these anonymous visitors return to the website, brands often end up losing the chance for a conversation altogether. I'm reaching out to show you the organizations and prospects visiting your website in real time using brand and offer SD Revolution a 30-day test run of our software. Are you available for a call this week to discuss next steps? Short and sweet.
And just to run through real quick, for version 2, intro's the same, the value prop's the same, but what I tried to change in this little test that I made, this A/B test, is the offer and the CTA. So in the second version, I said, you know, I'm reaching out to show you the organizations and prospects visiting your website in real time using our brand. Can I show you how it works on a quick call?
The change looks subtle, but I think it does make a pretty big impact on how someone would perceive this email. I like that. Yeah. Nice and subtle. Do you want to tackle, I guess, like in order, top to bottom, and then obviously because 1 and 2 are a bit different, we can take a look at the CTAs together, but starting at the intro and working our way down.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your initial thoughts
on it. So similarly to the first email, the pre-rewritten email in this sequence, I think I mentioned this, and I think you probably brought it up as well, but the idea behind what the original writer was attempting to do was illuminate a potential problem, right? So deep in that first email, somewhere in the middle, this phrase of the 98% of site traffic is found, and you took that, and for that first sentence, I think really captured the idea of illuminating a potential issue or challenge or pain that I might be facing with the sentence, are you tracking qualified website visitors that aren't captured as leads? I think the way that it's framed and the way that you just start the email with that really sets everything up moving forward to let me know that if I am tracking these qualified website visitors, this solution probably isn't for me. Like, I'm already all set in this department. I can basically ignore what you have to say. But if it's not, and I'm looking at that, it gets me thinking, gets my gears turning, thinking like, I'm probably not tracking these qualified website visitors. Let me bite and move to the next line. So I think the first line does a really good job at like hooking me in and making me think, and then prompting me to move to the next line to figure out what this is all about.
Yeah, I completely agree. That was kind of my intention behind the intro. And this is not any reinvention of the wheel. I use questions and intros quite often because it's so easy to do exactly what you said. You kind of give the opportunity at the very beginning for the prospect who is giving it attention. So I want to capture their attention with relevance, of course, but it gives qualified prospects the opportunity to raise their hand. And it also helps improve the time that I'm spending with people that are reading this email, because I don't want people to read an email and type back sure and kick tires and get a free 30-day test run when they have no intention of buying, or maybe they've they don't use a website and they just do outbound and they just have the website up there for kicks. Having a question like this allows you to almost pre-qualify as they're going through to read. And then, when we get into the story that I'm telling, I really liked it was an assumption in the original. It was an assumption that said, 98% of your traffic is you're missing out on 98% of it. And I wanted to turn that around. And even though I didn't QC this, because, this is just an example email we're walking through, I pretended that was a stat in the industry. And I wanted to call that out, because if someone did read the question above and say, no, I'm not, or maybe I wanted to do it better. Maybe the solution I'm using isn't working too well. Well, I wanted to give them a reason why I'm reaching out. Well, I didn't say I'm reaching out because I think that you're missing out on traffic. I wanted to tell them that, hey, people do miss out on a lot of traffic that don't convert into leads. And then I wanted to give them that missing state that they're missing out on if site traffic doesn't convert. Unless they return, I'm not pointing fingers at them, but I am saying, unless these visitors do return to a website, any brand is going to often lose the chance for a conversation, and it'll stay lost until they do return to the website. And so I'm trying to tee up basically a story within 2 lines so that I can make my offer contextually relevant. If I just reached out and in the intro I said, hey, I'm reaching out to show you the organizations and prospects visiting your website in real time, that might get some bites. People who are really bottom of funnel might say, oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. Yes, hand raised, let's go. But otherwise, it's not really driving any momentum and not really incentivizing people to say, like what is important about that? And by queuing it up with the question to kind of bring some curiosity, and then driving the stat to support that question, all of a sudden, anybody who is either middle of funnel, even maybe top of funnel, and maybe they're just discovering that this is a problem, it's a good way to have almost an advertisement in the inbox of qualified prospects. They might not respond to me now. They might not even read it as soon as I send it. But by having that question there in the pretext, we didn't go over subject lines, but along with a good subject line, as soon as someone does come into market or does start worrying about these issues, this is going to be a really, really good placement within their inbox to get a future conversation.
For sure. There's I guess a concept in conversion rate optimization land called a yes ladder, where if you want someone to, for example, like fill out a contact us form, you put very basic questions that they can agree with in front of them up until they get to the point where they're ready to submit their contact information, because at that point they've already agreed to 4 or 5 different things. So they're more invested in actually submitting their information versus dropping off and not getting in touch with you. And I think this email follows a very similar pattern where you're posing very simple questions that I can either agree with or respond yes to as the recipient of this email. Where at the beginning, if I'm tracking qualified web visitors, if I'm not doing that, I'm like, no, I'm not actually doing that. Get me to the next line. The story, as much as 98% of your site traffic won't make contact. I'm like, actually, that's interesting. And unless they return, then I lose the conversation. Like, oh, wow, now that you mention it, that is a problem for me. I'm slowly buying into what you're selling as it goes on, with albeit very simple prompts. This stuff, like you said, you can probably fact check it, but it's available on the internet. You can find stats like this. This is a problem that if you worked at this brand's company, you can assume a lot of these customers that you have this problem. Easy to pull from, customer success team and get it into an email for messaging. It's all stuff that, like, if you were an SDR working at this organization, in the back of your head, like, this is why I'm reaching out to these people. This is why someone would bother taking a call with me. It's a matter of how you can get it onto paper, theoretically, in a way that organizationally just makes sense for someone reading it to agree, to the point at the end when you get to the CTA, they're like, yeah, of course I would, take a call with you, or I would take a 30-day test run of the software. Like, why wouldn't I at this point? So I think it's that, simple is better concept, where you're just pushing information that you already know and that your prospects have to know before they end up making the decision to have a conversation with you. Just packaging it up in a way that makes sense.
Yeah, I love that, the yes ladder. That's an awesome concept. Cool. I know we're running out of time here, but just to kind of break down the reason for these two versions, kind of going into my test methodology. I made the assumption that I think the intro is pretty decent. I couldn't find any other way to kind of rewrite the way I position that. And I really wanted to keep this little purple and yellow section in the middle because I thought that it told a good story. I thought that regardless of what intro I used, that purple and yellow section talking about the purpose behind the software, I thought that could be a standalone that you could even use in a different email. But I wanted to test how to actually get people to say yes. So we're actually looking at optimizing conversions here. And the reason why I made the second version is because I read the first version. I read the, I'm reaching out to show you the organizations, blah, 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 blah. And I thought that it was very long. I tend to try to take out and statements if I can, especially if the sentences are 2 lines. And so I said, you know what? Instead of trying to both show the organizations, which is a value add, and then offer a test run, which might bleed into being seen as salesy or trying to start a sales conversation, I wanted to make a version that exclusively focused on the value I'm giving to the prospect. I wanted to take out any perception in the second version that I was trying to sell them, and just focus exclusively on kind of what AJ talked about, the yes ladder, getting them to agree, all the way up to the CTA. And so got rid of that second half of the offer. And then I adjusted the CTA to be even less salesy. Instead of saying, hey, are you available for a call this week to discuss this and the test run? I simply asked, like, hey, can I show you how this works? I wanted to give you value. If it is valuable to you, can I show you how this works? And so that's kind of the methodology behind this test here. Is often when you're creating offers or incentives, and then you're also designing call to actions, you're wanting to do so in a way that really minimizes friction. Because if they've read all the way down that far, those are your most likely candidates to become either meetings, conversations, or future customers.
Yeah, I really like the idea that you've built up this trust throughout the message that you can then you've made so many deposits that you can make that withdrawal at the end where it's like, can I just show you how this works? There's a lot to be said about like the ability to run a proof of concept, or like, you as the brand putting your money where your mouth is and offering up something of value like a 30-day test run for free, because that does cost you money, but you do it because you think that your solution is such a good fit and that the prospect will agree with you that they'll end up purchasing it. And it's almost like you're going that extra step. It's like when you send someone a gift or like a coffee card, right? It's like, hey, you're going to show up to this meeting, but I'll toss you $5 anyways, just to make sure. Like, hey, I know you see the value in this, but I'll toss you a 30-day test run just to make sure. You're almost like more confident in what you have to say with the second version of it, because you're like, I've given you all the reasons why. All you have to do is hop on a quick call and we can go for it. It just speaks to, like the level of confidence that you have, and knowing that the message that you've sent should resonate because you're targeting the right person, you have a good story, and the reasoning behind it is sound, versus the first version we saw where it was the spaghetti at the wall.
And I think you made a good point there about kind of showing the confidence, because also it shows your expertise or at least experience in the sales process. Because any good salesperson knows that even though you're not offering the 30-day test run in the email that they respond to, that doesn't mean that you can't offer that same thing once you get on a call with them, or once you have a little bit of a back and forth via an email chain. And so it's always good to, if you can, just minimize words when you're doing cold outreach until you start to build the rapport and draw that conversation along.
Give them a bite of the cookie. Don't give them the whole cookie yet.
Yeah, just little bits here and there. Cookie dough, little cookie dough pieces. Awesome. Hey, AJ, thanks you so much for joining me today. And thank you to everyone who joined us on the stream today. Next week, I believe we're going to be live on LinkedIn instead of Zoom. So for all of you who browse LinkedIn, you'll be able to start checking us out and just clicking through on the SD Revolution event and just clicking on LinkedIn Live for SDRescue. So join us next week for episode 55. And drop us any comments below on, what do you think about this email? What do you think about the original version versus the versions that we've made? What topics or concepts would you want us to bring into future episodes? We're always looking for feedback, and we'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for having me, Grayson. This was fun. Looking forward to the LinkedIn stuff. LinkedIn Live looks exciting. I'll see all of you there.